Tonight we have Professor Prof Soludo in Abuja. He joins us to shed more light and give his reaction to the judgment from Oka today. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us tonight. And let me start by asking you, it was some scare for you, isn't it, Prof, that your name was omitted. How did that come to you? And today's judgment, what kind of feeling do you have about it?
Thank you very much, Shehu. Thank you for having me. Thank you, those of you in channels. Continue to be the leading light. Let me first wish Nigerians a happy Salah holiday commencing tomorrow, and to our Muslim brothers happy Salah holiday celebrations. Let me start by saying, well, this is the season, and the state is Anambra. Every 4 years we go through this macabre dance, as it were. Courts of all sorts in the 36 states of the country, spewing out orders from everywhere, which is part of the conundrum of our system, that any court from anywhere could just give an order for what is going on. So when it came last week, a little bit surprising, not terribly so. I've been through this road before. When I ran in 2010, we had about 13 court cases in 3 months. And thanks goodness, the Nigerian judiciary stood firm and came through in the end. That ultimately, it might seem like a madhouse, but ultimately the judiciary comes through. So when it came, a little surprising in the sense that, surprising that INEC could take that seemingly surprising decision. But not surprising because, again, we see this all the time around the country. Why surprised about the INEC? And then now, you asked currently about today's decision. Like I said, ultimately I believe that the judiciary of Nigeria will ultimately come through. And so what happens today is a very important step in the whole process. Of course, those other court judgments have been appealed appropriately, and one is confident that the Court of Appeal, and probably if it ends at the Supreme Court, will do sound justice. And my response and the reaction to me was, well, at a personal level, you feel surprised at INEC that they could take the decision, and I'll come to that in a second, but also very comforted by the outpouring of support of thousands of people from all over the country and all over the world. The lives of estimated 20 million people from Anambra at home and abroad happen to be what is at stake in the entire thing. And I could see the outpouring of emotions and so on, to a point that actually took my intervention and that of major stakeholders of APGA and that of our governor as well, appealing to the people to remain calm, stopping people from getting to the streets to start protesting. But because we are confident that ultimately INEC will rise up to the responsibility to do the right thing, and the courts of law, of course, I have very implicit confidence that ultimately they will come through. So today's on, not surprising, because the case is self-evident. It's self-evident, and that's why I said surprise about the INEC's response. And let me state it clear what the facts are. The facts are that both myself and 8 others, 9 of us, there's no dispute as to who the national chairman of APGA is, was, is, and will remain until May 2023, and that's Ike Victoria. All of us were part of a national convention that was held in May 2019, witnessed by INEC, certified by INEC, and INEC since then had Oye and his national executive list as required by law that INEC should have the list of the national officers of the party in its custody. So all of us knew who the leadership of the party, what the leadership consisted of, and INEC knew. in their website up until Friday. It was still there. We all went to purchase forms, expression of interest, and nomination forms, 9 of us. We all went to the National Secretariat of the party for screening. And after screening, the screening committee, in its wisdom, felt that some aspirants were unfit to contest for the primaries, let alone holding the office of governor. And now one of them came out. He didn't like the fact that he was disqualified. I was disqualified some time ago. He didn't like the fact. He came out, created his own national chairman, and then traveled all the way to Benin Kudu. Benin Kudu is probably almost 1,000 kilometers from Oka, where the primaries were supposed to have held. And then a judge, High Court judge, State High Court there in Benin Kudu, oh wow, said now the Jude Okeke, the chairman created by this one, is now acting national chairman. 2, ordered INEC to accept nomination by this newly created national chairman. I said, this is wonderful. Of course, when you hear that, you think, would this be possible? By the way, why that judgment of 30th June is there was an earlier court judgment by an Anambra High Court on October 19, 2020, affirming the national convention at which Oye emerged as the national chairman. And that national convention was monitored and certified by INEC. Till date, INEC has not monitored any other national convention of APGA to produce the national officers. And an appeal court judgment has said that only the national convention of a party can remove its chairman. We're aware of all this, and I'm sure INEC is aware. The party constitution is there. So all of a sudden, you have this phantom thing, a court somewhere creates a national chairman and says you have to put in the name of the candidate who had gone for screening under the platform of the party and found to be unfit, and now foist him on the party. And INEC decides to bear. But there are, besides the High Court of Oka of 19th October 2020, that says it's Oye, till today, no court judgment, no national convention, neither has voided Oye's or that court decision and the convention. So it still remains a subsisting court order, valid, at least as explained to me by the learned councils.
All right.
Second, but can I just get you three other platforms? When my name was, INEC gave my name, gave the code to the national chairman on the 30th of June to upload my nomination, which everybody watched on national television, the primaries that produced me with 94% of the votes. And on the 2nd, when they opened their portal, my nomination was uploaded with an acknowledgement printed out. Hard copies delivered to INEC, and INEC signed the acknowledgement received. By Section 31, subsection 3 of the Electoral Act, it mandates the commission, says the commission shall, within 7 days of receipt of the nomination, publish the particulars of the candidate at the constituency in which is supposed to do the election. Shall do so within 7 days. That means my name ought to have been published on or before the 9th of this month. INEC surprisingly neglected to do so, or failed to do so. Then on the 15th day of this month, the commission then met to decide and said they now want to accept a new nomination from this chairman created at Benin Kudu, so to speak. But before then, there were 2 other court cases, court orders, Federal High Court at Oka, that asked INEC to maintain my name, maintain a status quo with regards to my nomination. Keep it there. There is also an Anambra High Court order asking INEC, keep his name there. INEC ignored these 4, but decided on the 15th to now accept a fresh nomination.
Yeah.
You can see why there is,
Let me quickly come here. The judgment from the Awka High Court today is a court of first instance, which means that it will go to the appellate court. In fact, this case might go up to the Supreme Court should your opponent decide to push this further. Does this situation, because it's not the first time I'm probably seeing this kind of legal tussle where we are seeing happening, not only in your party, in other political parties also, does this not cast shadow over your chances and that of APGA in this November 6th election?
No, not at all, Shehu. I believe that the court processes, I pray that the court processes become brief and short-lived. But however long that lasts, I believe that ultimately justice will be done. But one point again to note, Shehu, is that Anambra is an APGA state. The vast majority of the people, I would even put it, 70-80% of the people have settled for APGA for this election. So, from what happened last week, the reaction on ground is what will tell you that the people themselves felt extremely very angry, very agitated, but we calm them down to say, never mind. And in fact, the more they drag out this, the more even the sympathy is, ratcheting up by the day in terms of followership. Those who were sitting on the fence and those in other parties as well who were saying, wow, how come that this guy is the person? And you may also have heard last week to tell you the desperation. Of course, the reasons are not too far-fetched. There are all kinds of conspiracy theories. There was all this stuff about some group, some person going to a magistrate court to get start criminal proceedings, all intended to harass Soludo, harass him, and probably if he could break his will and all of that and so on and so forth, for a house that I have been renting for my family since 2006 in the UK. And all of a sudden somebody comes up and says, every election cycle somebody will come up, and this one is that, he didn't put it in asset declaration. How can you put in asset declaration an asset that doesn't belong to me? But that's all part of the whole grand plan, either to destabilize.
If I may again this issue primarily started targeting the leadership of the party, the contestation between Mr. Victor Oye, Mr. Njoku, Mr. Judo Keke, and it trickled onto the candidacy of APGA in this election. But a big question mark is on the leadership of the political leadership of APGA being the only, Anambra State being the only APGA state in Nigeria, and Governor Willie Obiano being the political leader of the party. So the question a lot of political analysts are bringing to the fore is your friend that it should have taken some political decision in stemming the tide and not allowing it to degenerate this to this point. Do you agree with those who blame him in part for this crisis that had lingered to this point?
Sure, I think there are quite a lot of suppositions, a lot of premises there. Absolutely no. When you have some of these things being stirred from outside, how could you ever anticipate that somebody goes for a screening, is disqualified, found to be unfit? Overnight, he creates a new chairman for himself, and the court sits somewhere and says, yes, he's now the new chairman. How do you, this happened all in the last 2 weeks or so. Creation of the Judo Keke. By the way, if you go to the INEC list website, and INEC has all the list of all the national officers of the party, neither Njoko nor Judo Keke happened to be in that list. They were not. So the thought about crisis in APGA is just mad by some media people. Somebody shows up and says, I am now national chairman. The media starts reporting it as, oh, he's the chairman of the party and all that kind of thing. Such a thing has no basis whatsoever. And I say to you, if you look at the Judo KK thing, it started like a joke, actually, and it's still a joke, almost like a criminal act. I will still maintain my personal opinion. This guy says, and the judgment in Binin Kudu says that Judo Keke is succeeding Edozie and Joko. Now, how can you build something on nothing? There has never been anywhere that you have Edozie and Joko as either a court judgment or an INEC recognized or anywhere as chairman of APUGA. And then Judo Keke comes up and says, I was deputy to Njoko, and I have now sacked Njoko, and I am now the national chairman. A court there says, yes, he is now the acting national chairman. That court process did not join APUGA. APUGA was not a party. Victoria was not a party. So how could you, as national leader, anticipate that this can even happen in any same place? So when you talk about, oh, this crisis, there is still not any. APUGA is intact under the leadership of OEM. So INEC knows it, Nigerians know it, APUGA members know it. And there is none. Anybody can come out tomorrow and say he is president of Nigeria. I mean, you can do that.
But Prof,
in the case of the country today.
I'm aware, and some of the things that your opponents are saying, and those who are not happy with your emergence, and have alleged that you are being imposed on them by the governor. These are some of the allegations being made in your party, that you are being imposed on them, and that is why this crisis has come up.
Well, when you talk about imposition, you all watched, I'm sure, Channels broadcast it live. You broadcast the primaries live, and where people fired up. No other political party has conducted the kind of transparent, free, fair primaries conducted by APUGA. None. Watched by millions of people around the world, around Nigeria and around the world. And you saw people file. The counting was done publicly. People were calling me from all over the world. And watched it, 94%. Total consensus. So when you think about, being imposed, being this, and so on and so forth, that figure and that exercise doesn't bear it out. The fact is that there is no other person running for office in Anambra. My people want me to run. My people want me to serve them. Millions of them in about 31 self-funded groups today in Anambra. Thousands with membership in hundreds of thousands. Clamoring, funding with their own money, with their own time and talents and everything. Clamoring for me to come and be their governor at this particular point in time in Nigeria. That wasn't part of the things I wanted to do in recent times. But the voice of the people is the voice of God. I decided to yield unto that. And I think the governor as well is convinced that I gave him my pedigree, my experiences, my exposure, my network, and so on. And given Nigeria's peculiar situation in the transition to a post-oil world, and given the fact of what he has been able to accomplish, that I am in the best position to consolidate on those gains and continue to move our state forward. It is his coming to terms with these facts and the facts of what the ordinary men and women of Anambra State feel on ground that makes them demand for this. The form that I bought, the form was actually paid for by the ordinary men and women. There were more than 10 groups that contributed money. One paid the 22 million outright. Others paid 10 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, 2 million. Several, I can't even count them. Various groups. So this is a people's movement.
All right. So,
it is
Professor,
a people's movement for the times of the day.
Yeah, so we can wrap up on this conversation. It is not a secret any longer that you're a favorite of the governor in this contest in your party. And
a favorite of the Anambra people too.
Well, that will be tested at the polls. But the big question here, Prof, is that, for those who say that Governor Obiano is now your political godfather, for you, is this a must that you must be a governor? Should this court case not go in your favor, what would you do?
Well, I think you've summarized it before. I think I'd answered that question before by telling you that this journey is a people's movement. It's primarily demand-driven. My offering myself is in response to the demand of the people for me to serve them. The people of Anambra, in their hundreds of thousands and millions, demand for this. You needed to have seen the reaction over the last few days when there was this fiasco to really get a feel of what I'm saying. I don't think the governor, Anambra as a state, abhors the idea of a godfather. And that is part of the challenges you have in several of the other parties, where they have to have this whole concept of a godfather. In Apuga, it is a mass movement. It is a people's movement. It is a people's party. And we're responding, the governor, in his own wisdom, two factors, in his own wisdom as to who he thinks, giving everything, profiling everybody, and thinking who he might suggest to be, and then responding also to the demands of the people themselves. So it is both. And for me, it's never politics. Service is not a life and death thing. I am offering myself to serve in gratitude to God for his bountiful blessings upon my life. Listen, Shehu, God has blessed me immensely. I accomplished all that there is to accomplish professionally in my life in my 30s. And so now it's time to give back. I've served the world, I've served the nation, and a grateful nation honored me with the third highest honor. I'm now going back for community service to serve my own people and the state at their own behest and their own demand. And that is what it is. If this is in the hand of God, Shehu, and God ultimately will decide that. And I believe that the courts of Nigeria, I have faith in the courts. They're going to do the needful. They're going to do the right thing. And ultimately, whatever God decides, I say, I submit to the supreme will of the Almighty God.
Professor Prof Soludo, former CBN governor and a governorship hopeful ahead of the November 6th governorship election in Anambra State. Thank you so much indeed for your time, and I wish you the very best in the coming days. You will need it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a break now, and when we return, we'll switch